I'll call to order the January 8th, 2018 regular business meeting of City Council. Mr. Hamp, give us the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
My pleasure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll remind those in attendance, if you wish to speak tonight during citizens' comment period, there's a sign-up sheet in the back. The first item of business is consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Allen?
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to remove 2D.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 2D, the ordinance adjusting the compensation of city council members effective July 2018?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. All right, Mr. Freeman?
Yeah, the reason I wanted to let everyone know that I will vote against this. I was in the hospital last meeting, so I wasn't here to have an opinion. But I wanted everyone to know before it just got passed one or the other. I have spoken with the rest of council since, except for Ms. Anderson, we kept missing each other. But I was afraid that when we raise the fee for council and remove a benefit, it might be eliminating some well-qualified men and women from potentially running. I think some people who may have retired would see it as a good way to join and use their mind in a way we all can benefit from. So I do want to say that's why I will vote against it. And it I was probably the biggest offender of using the health benefit as far as like a triple heart bypass a couple of years ago. And if it costs taxpayers money, it was pointed out that was one reason. I apologize for that, but I want it to be clear why I was going to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Is there any other discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve 2D as it was listed in the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Ah,
4 and 1 against. It passes. Do any members of City Council have anything they wish to present tonight?
This is two items, Mr. Mayor. First is going to ask, we've certainly as the winter is in full effect, as we approach into the spring and the conversations that as a body we've been having relative to code enforcement and neighborhood improvements. Discussion about abandoned cars have been sort of floating around. I've just asked that the city attorney maybe review our ordinance relative to what's allowed by Virginia law and prepare just a brief presentation for us at an upcoming meeting to see if there are opportunities in the current code that's allowed, permitted by the state, that we could improve our performance in that regard.
Yes.
The next is the mayor and I have had several meetings, and city manager have had several meetings with our local delegation in Richmond as of late, and I think I've enjoyed those conversations. I think I speak for all of us, and encouraged by the 3 specific things that we've been requesting and advocating for as a community. The first is the K-12 capital investment grant program, which I think is gaining some good traction actually across the state, as a matter of fact, with some patrons and co-patrons being identified for that measure. What that would essentially do, again, is locality that has a large-scale K-12 capital investment program activity So say like a high school that has a $20 million expense, this would provide up to a $10 million state matching grant to offset some of that local expense. Currently, the state doesn't contribute anything to K-12 capital investments, and so look forward to seeing how that progresses through the legislative agenda this upcoming session. The next was an innovation facility to bring a center of higher learning here to Waynesboro, and we're encouraged by that conversation. And then lastly, but not least, would be the advocating for the initial preliminary engineering architectural funds to facilitate the Waynesboro branch of the Natural History Museum here in our downtown, of which we have received confirmation that and assurance that those measures will be introduced by Delegate Bell, and we've got some co-patrons lined up as well. So appreciate their efforts and just wanted to acknowledge that just for the body and as well as for those that in the audience. So thank you.
Thank you for the update. Anybody else? Okay. Item 4A is to receive the viewer's report and set a public hearing for January the 22nd, 2018, on the request by William G. Watkins, agent for Dr. Kenneth Bowman, to close and vacate approximately 2 acres of unimproved alleys and streets at the end of May Avenue in Basic City. Mr. Hamp.
Mayor Allen and members of council, the viewers' reports are included in your agenda packet this evening. You'll note that all 3 viewers report that they do not perceive that any inconvenience will result to the public if the proposed vacation is approved. And again, all 3 viewers report that no landowner or landowners abutting the proposed vacation will suffer any special damage if the vacation is approved. There is one note from a viewer that the consideration should be given so that this request does not impede plans for the Sunset Park. Council this evening simply should vote by a single motion to receive the viewer's report and set the public hearing for the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. Hamp. Is there a motion to receive the report and set the date for January 22nd?
Moved.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Any other discussion?
If we could ask, I think Ms. Hulvey was the one that commented about Sunset Park, if you all could prepare something in advance for the public hearing, just so we can have staff's perspective of that impact, if any.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anything else? If
Yeah, it was Ms. Hulvey.
it was. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Item 4B is a matter continued from the December 11th meeting that is to consider introducing an ordinance at the request of Balzer and Associates, Inc., agent for Waynesboro Place, LLC, to amend an approved plan unit development known as Waynesboro Place at Windy Grove Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, city tax map numbers 51-20-1-1 and 51-20-1-2 and 51-20-2-1 and 62-8-3-2 and 61-2-3-1. Mr. Hamp.
So let me look to Mr. Jude. Do we have a document? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is the same rezoning that I presented last meeting in December. Some concerns were raised both by members of the public and by members of council about the connectivity in that area as we're adding density and people walking around there and being incomplete sidewalks. And so the developer has come to us today with a proffer that they'll contribute $20,000 towards the construction of an extension of the sidewalk on Windy Grove Drive all the way to the intersection of Rosser and Windy Grove. We're waiting on the official copy of that, which is on its way to us right now, but we can sign another copy right now to ensure that it's yeah. So the proffer is as follows. The owners of Waynesboro Place LLC do voluntarily agree and proffer as follows. The owners shall pay to the city $20,000 for the construction of a sidewalk along Windy Grove Drive or any portion thereof. Such payment shall be paid in full upon receipt by the owner of notice from the city that the sidewalk project has been completed. The owner shall have no obligation to make such payment unless within 5 years of the date that council approves the amendment to the original PUD, the city enters into a contract for the construction of the sidewalk project or begins construction of the sidewalk. Within 30 days from the date that council approves the amendment to the original PUD, the owner shall provide appropriate and durable financial assurance to the city of the $20,000 payment by providing a letter of credit, cash escrow, or bond. So basically, we have to start construction of that sidewalk or get it under contract within 5 years. And if we haven't done that, then the proffer will become invalid. This is a proffer that applies specifically to this amendment to the PUD, which is classified technically as a rezoning. So it's not an amendment to the original set of proffers. It's a new proffer based on this.
Based on what you presented at our last meeting.
Correct.
So the only thing we're doing is adding this additional
The
problem.
only thing we're doing is adding this, correct. And I have the original presentation up if you want to review any part of it or discuss any part of it.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Juday? All right, thank you. Is there a motion from a council member to introduce?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Item 5 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing the city manager and/or the mayor to receive real properties interest on behalf of the city of Waynesboro for the calendar year 2018. Mr. Ham.
Mayor Allen, members of council, in order for the city to accept real property interests, the city council must act affirmatively to do so. Real property interests include easements, rights-of-way, and ownership interests. The required affirmative action has its origins in common law and prevents the owner of land from dumping land and property on the government to escape responsibilities and liabilities associated with ownership. The resolution presented for your consideration would authorize the mayor and the city manager to receive real property interests on behalf of the city for the calendar year 2018, alleviating the need to schedule each item for city council action. The most common benefit would be easements granted to the city related to recreational road, utility construction, and maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Ham. Is there any questions of Mr. Ham? If not, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Marks. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Item 6A is to consider introducing an ordinance appropriating $46,000 from the Capital Projects Fund local match for grants reserved to provide for Waynesboro match for expenditures related to the Rosser Avenue Lucy Lane Sidewalk project. Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, in December of 2016, the City Council applied for and ultimately received revenue sharing money to construct a sidewalk along Rosser Avenue between Lucy Lane and Tiffany Drive, and then to continue along Lucy Lane to the entrance of Walmart. We're ready to proceed with that project. Our obligation is to match 50% of the revenue sharing grant, total value $92,000. We're proposing that we would take these monies from a capital projects fund to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Are there any questions regarding this matter? If not, is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Item 6B is to consider introducing an ordinance appropriating $17,000 of state asset forfeiture funds for transfer to the equipment fund to provide funding for a used vehicle for the Special Operations Division of the Police Department. Mr. Ham.
I would note first that the asset forfeiture funds are resources that come into the benefit of the department by virtue of their drug interdiction in the area. It can take the form of equipment, vehicles, cash, but it's property that is seized as part of the interdiction and drug enforcement in our community. These funds would be used to purchase a used, unmarked vehicle for assignment to a sergeant who is being assigned to the Skyline Drug Task Force. That assignment will complement some additional resource that the task force in the city will enjoy benefit of from the DEA. I think in part because of need in the community and region, and in part because of the efficacy of the task force, the DEA is assigning some additional human resource and additional financial resource. The local resource that will be benefiting or using the vehicle will work under the auspices and general coordination and supervision of the task force, but will work in interdiction locally. So that's an encouraging benefit for our community. If you have any other questions, I would just note again, as asset forfeiture resources, these are not local tax or fee resources.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Hamp? Reference to
I would just like to know, in the past, what have you used these funds for?
So in the past, we have used federal and state asset forfeiture resources for body cameras, for body armor, for weaponry, training, other police equipment, software, technology. And I think, though not recently, I think we have used asset forfeiture resources to purchase vehicles. So a wide variety of items that are either capital or softer in nature.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Item 7 is communications, correspondence, and calendar.
I don't have anything this evening, sir.
Number 8, citizens' comment period.
No one has signed up to speak.
Then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Then we are adjourned. Thank you.